You will die in prison. Judge stuns court as 8-year-old boy for killing his mother. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The courtroom was silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from respect or ceremony. This was the silence of disbelief, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your stomach turn. Ethan Hale sat in a chair too big for him. His feet didn't touch the ground. He wore a button-up shirt that was slightly too large, sleeves rolled twice at the cuffs. His hands were folded on the table in front of him. Small and still. He didn't cry, he didn't speak. He just stared straight ahead with eyes that seemed far too old for an 8-year-old boy. The judge, Caroline Brent, adjusted her glasses and looked down at the paperwork in front of her. Her face was carved from stone, no emotion, no hesitation. She had presided over hundreds of cases in Brookridge County, Oregon, but never one like this. Ethan Michael Hale, she began, her voice echoing through the room. You have been found guilty of the murder of Amanda Hale, your mother. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A gasp rippled through the gallery. Someone sobbed. A camera shutter clicked in the back row despite the no photography rule. The bailiff didn't stop it. Ethan didn't flinch. His court-appointed attorney, a man named Greg Pullman, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, said, nothing. He had barely put up a defense. The case was open and shut, they said. The evidence was clear, they said. An 8-year-old boy, a kitchen knife, his mother's blood on his pajamas. What else was there to say? Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed like locusts. News vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who walked past. The phrase youngest convicted murderer in Oregon history was already trending online. Inside a small diner 3 blocks away, a woman sat alone in a corner booth. Sarah Monroe, 38, former investigative journalist turned freelance writer. She nursed a cold cup of coffee and stared at her laptop screen. The headline read, Child Killer Sentenced, Nation in Shock. She scrolled through the comments. Outrage, disgust, calls for harsher punishment. A few voices of doubt quickly drowned out. Sarah had seen this before. The way a story could be shaped. The way truth could be bent until it snapped. She clicked on a video. Ethan being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. His face blank, his body limp. He looked more like a puppet than a person. Sarah replayed it 3 times. Then she closed her laptop and whispered to herself, was that really what happened? Or was that what they said happened? Across town, in a modest office cluttered with case files and psychology textbooks, Dr. Lionel Griggs sat behind his desk. He was 52, with graying hair and tired eyes, a forensic psychiatrist who had spent decades studying the minds of criminals, adults and juveniles alike. He had watched the trial from a distance, read the reports, reviewed the evidence presented. Something didn't sit right. Children who kill are rare. Children who kill with premeditation, almost unheard of. And children who kill without motive, without history of violence, without a single red flag in their behavioral record. That was impossible. Dr. Griggs opened a drawer and pulled out a worn notebook. He flipped to a blank page and wrote a single question at the top. What are we missing? Back in the courtroom now. Empty except for the cleaning staff, a janitor swept the aisles. He noticed something under one of the benches, a small notebook. He picked it up and flipped it open. Inside, scrawled in neat handwriting, were notes from the trial. But on the last page, someone had written in red ink, "They're protecting someone." The janitor shrugged and tossed it into the lost and found bin. No one ever came to claim it. Was that really what happened, or was that what they said happened? The day before Amanda Hale died, the sun rose over Brookridge like any other morning, the kind of morning where nothing feels wrong, where everything seems normal. But normal is a lie we tell ourselves when we don't want to see the cracks. Amanda stood in the kitchen of their small 2-story house on Maple Drive. She was 34 years old, with dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She wore a faded yellow cardigan and jeans. Her hands moved automatically as she poured cereal into a bowl for Ethan. He sat at the table, quiet as always. His legs swung beneath the chair, not quite reaching the floor. He had his mother's dark eyes, but where hers were sharp and alert, his were distant, thoughtful. "You okay, sweetheart?" Amanda asked, setting the bowl in front of him. Ethan nodded. He didn't look up. Amanda watched him for a moment, then turned back to the counter. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small bottle of pills. Anxiety medication. She had been taking it for 6 months. Her hands trembled slightly as she twisted the cap open. Ethan glanced up just for a second. He saw the bottle. He didn't ask what it was. He had learned not to ask questions. Amanda swallowed 2 pills dry and shoved the bottle back into her purse. She zipped it shut quickly, as if hiding evidence. Then she walked to the kitchen drawer near the stove, the one with the lock on it. She pulled a small key from her pocket, unlocked it, and placed something inside. Ethan couldn't see what it was. She locked it again and slipped the key back into her pocket. "Eat your breakfast," she said softly. Not looking at him, Ethan ate in silence. Later that afternoon, Amanda took Ethan to the park. It was a routine they had. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she would sit on the bench with her phone while he played on the swings. But that day, Amanda didn't sit. She stood near the edge of the playground, phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and tense. "I told you I can't do this anymore," she hissed into the phone. "He's going to find out, and if he does—" She stopped mid-sentence, glancing toward Ethan. He was watching her from the top of the slide. Amanda forced a smile and waved. Ethan waved back and went down the slide. She turned away and lowered her voice even more. "Just stay away, please, for his sake." She hung up without waiting for a response. When they got home, Amanda made dinner. Spaghetti, Ethan's favorite. But she barely touched her own plate. She kept glancing at the clock on the wall, waiting for something. At 7:30, the phone rang. Amanda jumped. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello?" A pause. "No, not tonight. I said no." Another pause. Her jaw tightened. "Fine, but this is the last time." She hung up and exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the counter. Ethan stood in the doorway watching. "Go brush your teeth, Ethan," she said without turning around. "Okay, Mom." He disappeared upstairs. Amanda stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she walked to the locked drawer again. She opened it with the key and stared at whatever was inside. She closed it, locked it, and walked upstairs to tuck Ethan into bed. "Good night, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "Good night, Mom." She turned off the light and closed the door. Downstairs, the house was quiet, too quiet. At 10:15 that night, a car pulled up outside the house. The engine idled for a moment, then shut off. A figure stepped out and walked up the driveway. The motion sensor light didn't turn on. It had been broken for weeks. The figure didn't knock. They used a key. The front door opened quietly, closed quietly. Upstairs, Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He heard the door, he heard footsteps. He pulled the blanket over his head and squeezed his eyes shut. Downstairs, Amanda's voice was barely audible, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear. By morning, Amanda Hale would be dead, and Ethan would be the only one left to answer for it. The 911 call came in at 6:47 a.m. The voice on the other end was shaking, barely coherent. There's blood, so much blood. I think she's dead. Oh God, I think she's dead." The dispatcher stayed calm. "Sir, what is your address? Who is dead?" "Maple Drive, 428 Maple Drive. It's Amanda Hale. Please, you have to send someone." "Who is this? Are you injured?" A pause. Heavy breathing. "I'm her neighbor. I came to drop off mail and the door was open and— Oh God, the boy. The boy is just sitting there." "What boy?" "Her son. Ethan, he's just sitting there, staring, sitting there." The dispatcher sent units immediately. Within minutes, 3 patrol cars and an ambulance screamed down the quiet street. Neighbors came out onto their porches, squinting in the early morning light. Some held coffee mugs. Some held their children close. Deputy Rick Osborne was the first to enter the house. He had been with the Brookridge County Sheriff's Department for 12 years. He had seen car accidents, domestic disputes, overdoses. But nothing prepared him for what he saw in that kitchen. Amanda Hale lay on the floor near the sink. Her body was twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood pooled. Beneath her, dark and thick, her eyes were open, staring at nothing. Osborne froze for a moment, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. "We need a coroner and CPS, now." Then he saw the boy. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had eaten cereal the day before. He was still. In his pajamas, blue with little rocket ships on them. There was blood on the sleeve. Not a lot, but enough. His hands were in his lap. His face was blank. "Hey, buddy," Osborne said softly, kneeling down a few feet away. "Can you hear me?" Ethan didn't respond. He didn't blink. He didn't move. Osborne tried again. "Ethan, that's your name, right? Ethan." Nothing. Another deputy, a woman named Laura Finch, entered the house. She saw the body and stopped cold. Then she saw the boy. "Jesus," she whispered. Osborne stood and walked over to her, keeping his voice low. "He hasn't said a word. Won't even look at me. Where's the father?" "No idea. Neighbor said the mother lived alone with the kid." Finch looked around the kitchen. Her eyes landed on something near the table. A knife. A large kitchen knife, the kind used for cutting meat. It was lying on the floor, just a few feet from where Ethan sat. "Rick," she said quietly, pointing. Osborne saw it. His stomach turned. The forensic team arrived 20 minutes later. They photographed everything: the body, the knife, the blood spatter on the cabinets, the small handprint on the table, and they photographed Ethan. He still hadn't moved. One of the forensic techs, a man named Carl Brennan, knelt beside the boy with a camera. He took close-ups of the blood on the pajama sleeve, of Ethan's hands, of his face. "Kid's in shock," Brennan muttered to Osborne. "Seen it before. Trauma response. Brain just shuts down." "You think he saw it happen?" Brennan glanced at the knife, then at the boy. "I think he did more than see it." By 8 a.m., the house was swarming with investigators. Crime scene tape blocked off the driveway. News crews were already setting up across the street, their cameras pointed at the front. Door like vultures circling a carcass. Inside, Detective Raymond Shaw stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. He was 49, balding, with a thick mustache and a reputation for closing cases fast. He looked at the body, then at the knife, then at the boy, who had finally been moved to the living room and wrapped in a blanket. "Any sign of forced entry?" Shaw asked. "None," Finch said. "Front door was unlocked, but no damage. No broken windows. Nothing." "Any sign of a struggle?" "Not really. Looks like she was attacked from behind. Single wound to the chest. Deep. Clean." Shaw walked over him to the knife now sealed in an evidence bag. "And the kid?" "Blood on his clothes, no visible injuries, won't talk." Shaw nodded slowly. He had seen enough. "Bag the pajamas, get prints off the knife, and get that kid to the station. We need answers." Finch hesitated. "Rick, he's 8 years old." "I know how old he is," Shaw said coldly. "And right now, he's the only person who was in this house when his mother was murdered." Ethan was placed in the back of a patrol car. As they drove away, he turned his head and looked out the window. He saw his house, the yellow crime scene tape, the neighbors staring. And for the first time that morning, he blinked. By the time the sun set, the investigation was already complete. The knife had Ethan's fingerprints on it. The blood on his pajamas matched his mother's. And the story was already written. The news broke before noon. Child arrested. In mother's murder, Brookridge in shock. Within an hour, every major outlet in Oregon had picked it up. By evening, it was national. The footage played on loop. The small house on Maple Drive. The yellow crime scene tape. The patrol car driving away with a boy in the back seat, his face barely visible through the tinted window. But it was enough. The anchors spoke in grave tones. They used words like unthinkable, horrific, and unprecedented. They showed Amanda's photo, a smiling woman at a birthday party, holding a cake. They showed Ethan's school picture, a quiet-looking boy with dark eyes and a hint of a smile. That smile would haunt him. How could a child do this, one commentator asked. What kind of monster are we dealing with? The answer, it seemed, was already decided. By the second day, the details began to leak. Someone in the sheriff's department. No one would say. Who spoke to a reporter? Off the record, of course. The kid didn't even cry, the source said. Just sat there. Didn't say a word. Didn't ask for his mom. Nothing. The reporter ran with it. Cold-blooded? 8-year-old shows no remorse after mother's murder. Another outlet went further. Friends. Say boy was different. Quiet, isolated, emotionless. They interviewed a teacher from Ethan's school. Mrs. Brennan, 3rd grade. She looked uncomfortable on camera, but she spoke anyway. Ethan was a very quiet child, she said carefully. He didn't play with the other kids much. Kept to, himself. But I never imagined. The interviewer leaned in. Did he ever show signs of aggression, violent behavior? Mrs. Brennan hesitated. Well, there was one time. Another student said Ethan pushed him, but it was never confirmed. Kids that age, the clip was edited. What aired was, there was one time Ethan pushed him. The context was gone. Another neighbor was interviewed, an older woman named Diane Fletcher who lived 2 houses down. I always thought something was off about that boy, she said, shaking her head. He never smiled, never waved, just stared. You could feel it, Something wrong. Did you ever see him act violently? No, but you could just tell. The internet exploded. True crime forums lit up with theories. Reddit threads stretched into thousands of comments. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to the case, dissecting every detail, every photo, every rumor. Some called for the death penalty, even though Ethan was a minor. Others called for life in a psychiatric facility. A few voices tried to push back, asking questions, demanding more evidence. They were shouted down. On the 3rd day, a psychologist named Dr. Marcus Leland appeared on a national morning show. He had never met Ethan, never examined him, but he had opinions. What we're likely dealing with here, Dr. Leland said, adjusting his glasses, is a child with severe attachment disorder, possibly early-stage sociopathy. These children lack the ability to form emotional bonds. They don't process guilt or empathy the way we do. So he's dangerous? The host asked. Potentially, yes. Children like this, they don't get better. They get worse. The host nodded gravely. Terrifying. The clip went viral. At the Brookridge County Sheriff's Department, Detective Shaw sat in an interrogation room across from Ethan. The boy had been there for 2 days. A social worker sat beside him, a woman named Angela Ruiz. She looked exhausted. Shaw leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. Ethan, I need you to talk to me. I need you to tell me what happened. Ethan stared at the table. He hadn't spoken since the morning his mother died. Did you and your mom have a fight? Shaw asked. Did she make you angry? Nothing. Ethan, we found your fingerprints on the knife. We found your mother's blood on your clothes. We know you were there. Still nothing. Shaw sighed and leaned back. You're not making this easy, kid. Angela Ruiz spoke up. Detective, he's clearly in shock. You can't expect... What I expect, Shaw interrupted, is for him to tell the truth. He stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. You know what happens to kids who hurt people, Ethan? They don't get to go home, they don't get to play, they don't get to have a life. Ethan's fingers twitched, just barely. But he didn't look up. Shaw left the room. Outside, Deputy Finch was waiting. Anything? She asked. Not a word, Shaw said. But we don't need him to talk. The evidence speaks for itself. By the end of the week, the case was closed in the court of public opinion. Ethan Hale, 8 years old, was a killer, a monster, a child without a soul, and when his trial began 2 months later, no one was surprised by the verdict. But across town, in a small office cluttered with case files, Dr. Lionel Griggs read through the police report one more time, and the more he read, the less sense it made. Sarah Monroe hadn't taken a real case in 3 years, not since the Daniels investigation, the one that cost her everything: her credibility, her reputation, her career at the Portland Tribune. She had been so sure. The evidence pointed to corruption at the highest levels of city government. She published the story, front page, bold headlines, and then it all fell apart. One source recanted. Documents were proven fake. The lawsuit came fast and brutal. The Tribune settled out of court and fired Sarah the same day. She became a cautionary tale, the journalist who got it wrong. Now she wrote freelance pieces for websites no one read. Listicles. 10 ways to save money on groceries. Best hiking trails. Near Portland. It paid the bills. Barely. But the Ethan Hale case pulled at something inside her. Something she thought had died. She watched the trial from her apartment. Every day, every witness, every piece of evidence presented, and every day, the same thought kept circling in her mind. This doesn't add up. The prosecution's case was built on 3 things: the fingerprints on the knife, the blood on Ethan's pajamas, and his silence. But Sarah had covered enough crime to know that silence didn't equal guilt, especially not in a traumatized child. She opened her laptop and started digging. The first thing she found was the timeline. According to the coroner's report, Amanda Hale died between 10 p.m. and midnight, but Ethan had been found sitting at the kitchen table at 6:47 a.m. That meant the boy had been alone with his mother's body for at least 6 hours. 6 hours. And he never called for help, never ran to a neighbor, never screamed. The prosecution used that as proof of guilt. A child who just witnessed a murder would be hysterical, they argued. Ethan Hale showed no emotion because he felt no remorse. But Sarah had read studies on childhood trauma. She knew what shock looked like, what dissociation looked like. Ethan hadn't acted like a killer. He had acted like a victim. She kept digging. The neighbor who found the body, a man named Gerald Voss, gave a statement to police. But when Sarah tracked down the full transcript, something stood out. Voss said, the front door had been slightly open when he arrived. Not wide open, not locked, just ajar. Why would an 8-year-old leave the door open after killing his mother? Sarah made a note. Then she found the teacher's interview. Mrs. Brennan, the one who mentioned Ethan pushing another student. Sarah called the school. After 20 minutes of bureaucratic runaround, she got through to Mrs. Brennan herself. I didn't want to do that interview, Mrs. Brennan admitted quietly. They twisted my words. Ethan never pushed anyone. Another kid said he did, but I never saw it. I told them that, but they didn't care. Why didn't you correct them? A long pause. I was afraid. Everyone already decided he was guilty. I didn't want to be the one defending a child killer. Sarah thanked her and hung up. Another note. She pulled up the forensic report next. The knife, a standard kitchen knife, 8 inches long. Ethan's fingerprints were on the handle, but the report also noted something else. Smudging, overlapping prints, as if the knife had been held by more than one person. That detail wasn't mentioned in court. Sarah sat back and stared at her screen. What are they hiding, she thought. About her editor at the Tribune, the one who told her she was done. You got too close, Sarah. You stopped being objective. You started believing your own narrative. Maybe he was right, but maybe he was wrong. She opened a new document and typed a single sentence at the top. What if Ethan Hale didn't kill his mother? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Sarah stared at it. Her heart pounded. She typed back, Who is this? No response. She set the phone down. Her hands were shaking. For 3 years, she had played it safe, kept her head down, stayed out of trouble. But now she had a choice. Walk away, again, or find the truth. Sarah closed her laptop, grabbed her jacket, and walked out the door. She had a case to crack, and somewhere in Brookridge, someone was watching. Michael Hale showed up 3 days after the verdict. He walked into the Brookridge County Courthouse like a man stepping into a fire. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, reeking of cheap whiskey and regret. Sarah was there, watching from the back of the gallery. She had been following the case closely, sitting through every hearing, every motion. When she saw Michael stumble through the doors, she knew immediately who he was, the father who disappeared. Michael approached the clerk's desk and asked to see his son. The clerk looked at him like he was a ghost. "Sir, visiting hours are—" "I'm his father," Michael interrupted. His voice cracked. "I'm Ethan's father." The clerk hesitated, then picked up the phone. Sarah moved closer, pretending to read a bulletin board on the wall. She listened. "Where have you been?" the clerk asked quietly, after hanging up. Michael didn't answer. He just stood there, gripping the edge of the desk like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "They're not going to let you see him today," the clerk said. "You'll need to file paperwork, prove identity. It's going to take time." Michael nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked out. Sarah followed. She caught up with him in the parking lot. He was leaning against a rusted pickup truck, hands shaking as he tried to light a cigarette. "Mr. Hale?" He looked up, startled. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sarah Monroe. I'm a journalist." Michael's face darkened. "Get lost." "I'm not here to write a hit piece," Sarah said quickly. "I'm here because I think your son is innocent." Michael froze. The cigarette dangled from his lips unlit. "What did you say?" "I said I think Ethan didn't do it." Michael stared at her. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You're about 3 years too late, lady." "Maybe, but I'm here now." Michael finally lit the cigarette and took a long drag. He exhaled slowly, staring at the ground. "You want to know where I was?" he asked quietly. "When my wife died? When my son got arrested?" Sarah waited. "I was in Nevada, working a job, construction. Hadn't spoken to Amanda in 2 years. Didn't even know she was—" He stopped. His voice broke. "Didn't know she was dead until I saw it on the news." "Why didn't you come back sooner?" "Because I'm a coward," Michael said simply. "Because I left them. Because I was too drunk and too broken to be a father. And because I knew if I came back, everyone would blame me too." Sarah studied him. He looked like a man who had aged a decade in 3 years. "Tell me about Amanda," she said. Michael took another drag. "What do you want to know? Was she stable?" Michael laughed again, sharper this time. "Stable? Amanda? No. She was a lot of things, but stable wasn't one of them." "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then he sighed. "She had anxiety. Bad. Started after Ethan was born. Postpartum, they called it. But it never went away. She was on medication. Saw a therapist for a while, but she stopped going." "Why?" "Said the therapist was asking too many questions. About me. About our marriage. About—" He trailed off. "About what?" Michael looked at her, his eyes red. "About my brother." Sarah's pulse quickened. "You have a brother?" "Had," Michael corrected. "Danny, 2 years younger than me, always had problems. Mental health stuff. Couldn't hold a job. Couldn't stay out of trouble." "Where is he now?" Michael flicked ash onto the pavement. "Don't know. Last I heard he was staying with Amanda. Couple months before she died. She felt sorry for him. Let him crash on the couch." "Did the police know about him?" Michael shrugged. "I don't know. I wasn't there." Sarah's mind raced. "Mr. Hale, this is important. Was Danny there the night Amanda died?" "I told you. I don't know. I wasn't there." "But he could have been?" Michael looked away. "Yeah, he could have been." Sarah pulled out her notebook. What's Danny's full name? Daniel Arthur Hale. Do you have a photo? Michael reached into his wallet and pulled out an old, creased picture. Two men standing in front of a lake. One was Michael, younger, smiling. The other was thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a crooked grin. That's Danny, Michael said quietly. Taken about 5 years ago. Haven't seen him since. Sarah took a photo of the picture with her phone. Mr. Hale, did the police ever question your brother? Michael shook his head. Far as I know, they never even mentioned him. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Why not? Michael looked at her with hollow eyes. Because they already had their monster, and monsters once named are hard to unmake. Sarah spent the next 2 days searching for Daniel Hale. Public records showed nothing. No current address, no phone number, no social media presence. It was like he vanished into thin air the day Amanda died. But Sarah had learned a long time ago that people don't just disappear. They leave traces, breadcrumbs. You just had to know where to look. She started with the basics, credit reports, traffic violations, hospital records, nothing. Then she tried something different. She went back to Maple Drive. The house was still empty. Crime scene tape long gone, but no one wanted to buy it. A murder house. Cursed, some said. Sarah knocked on doors. Most people didn't want to talk. They shut the door in her face or pretended not to be home. But one woman answered, Mrs. Eleanor Pitts, 72 years old, lived directly across the street from the Hale house. I remember him, Mrs. Pitts said, standing in her doorway with a cup of tea. The brother, scraggly-looking man, came and went at odd hours. Did you ever talk to him? Once. He asked to borrow my phone, said his was broken. I didn't let him in. Something about him made me uneasy. Do you remember when you last saw him? Mrs. Pitts thought for a moment. 2 days before Amanda died, maybe 3. He left in a hurry, threw a bag in the back of an old car and just drove off. Did you tell the police this? Mrs. Pitts frowned. They never asked. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Mrs. Pitts, did you see anyone at the house the night Amanda died? The old woman hesitated. She glanced around as if someone might be listening. I saw a car, she said quietly, around 10:30, parked in the driveway. Lights off. I didn't think much of it at the time. Thought maybe Amanda had a visitor. Did you see who it was? No. Too dark. But the car sat there for a while, maybe 20 minutes. Then it left. Sarah's pulse quickened. What kind of car? Old sedan, dark color, blue maybe, or black. Did you tell the police? Mrs. Pitts looked down at her tea. I called the tip line, left a message. No one ever called me back. Sarah thanked her and walked back to her car. She sat in the driver's seat, staring at the Hale house. A car, a visitor, a brother who disappeared, and no one investigated. That evening, Sarah drove to the Brookridge County Records office. It was closing in 20 minutes, but she slipped in just before they locked the doors. I need to see property records for 428 Maple Drive, she told the clerk. The clerk, a bored-looking man in his 50s, sighed and typed into the computer. That's the Hale house, right? The murder house? Yes. He printed out a few pages and handed them to her. Anything else? Sarah scanned the documents. Standard property records, purchase history, tax information. Then she saw it, a line buried in the fine print. Amanda Hale had filed a restraining order 3 months before her death against Daniel Arthur Hale. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the details. The order stated that Daniel was not permitted within 500 feet of Amanda or Ethan. Reason: erratic behavior, threats of violence. The restraining order was granted, but Daniel violated it multiple times. Amanda filed 2 complaints with the police. Both were logged but never followed up. Sarah looked up at the clerk. Can I get copies of police reports related to this address? The clerk shrugged. You'll have to file a public records request. Takes a few weeks, and I don't have a few weeks. The clerk leaned back in his chair. Then I can't help you. Sarah left the office and sat in her car, staring at the restraining order. Amanda was terrified of Daniel. She tried to keep him away. The police knew about him, and yet, when she died, no one looked for him. Sarah pulled out her phone and called the only person she could think of who might help, Dr. Lionel Griggs. She had seen his name in a few articles, a forensic psychiatrist who occasionally consulted on criminal cases. He had been quoted once, months ago, expressing doubt about the Ethan Hale verdict. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. Dr. Griggs speaking. Dr. Griggs, my name is Sarah Monroe. I'm a journalist investigating the Ethan Hale case. A pause. I'm listening. I found something. Amanda Hale had a restraining order against her brother-in-law. He was, living with her. He disappeared the day she died, and the police never investigated him. Another pause. Longer this time. Where are you right now? Brookridge, outside the records office. Stay there, Dr. Griggs said. I'm coming to you. He hung up. Sarah sat in the dark, staring at the restraining order in her hands. Amanda had been afraid. She had tried to protect herself, and no one listened. But someone else had been listening all along, and they didn't want the truth to come out. Dr. Lionel Griggs arrived 40 minutes later in a gray sedan that had seen better days. He parked next to Sarah's car and stepped out, a worn leather briefcase in hand. He was tall, with graying hair and sharp, tired eyes. He looked like a man who had spent too many years staring into the darkest parts of the human mind. Miss Monroe, he said, extending a hand. Sarah shook it. Thank you for coming. Show me what you found. They sat in Sarah's car with the dome light on. She spread the documents across the dashboard, the restraining order, the police complaints, the timeline. Dr. Griggs read in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. This changes everything. No. The prosecution never mentioned any of this at trial, he said, which means they either didn't know or they didn't want to know, Sarah finished. Dr. Griggs leaned back in the passenger seat. I reviewed Ethan's psychological evaluation, the one conducted by the state before trial. It was a joke. 15 minutes with a child psychologist who had already made up his mind. What did it say? That Ethan showed signs of detachment and emotional flatness. They used it to paint him as a sociopath. But that's not what you think. Dr. Griggs shook his head. I've worked with traumatized children for 20 years. What they described isn't sociopathy, it's dissociation, a defense mechanism. The mind shuts down to protect itself from unbearable pain. So Ethan wasn't cold-blooded, he was terrified. Exactly. Sarah looked at the restraining order again. If Daniel Hale was in that house the night Amanda died, and if Ethan saw what happened, then the boy has been protecting himself the only way he knows how, Dr. Griggs said quietly, by shutting down completely. We need to find Daniel. Agreed. But there's something else we need first. What? The forensic report. The full version. Not the sanitized summary presented in court. Sarah frowned. How do we get that? Dr. Griggs pulled a business card from his briefcase and handed it to her. It belonged to a woman named Dr. Evelyn Marsh, medical examiner, Brookridge County. Evelyn and I go back years, he said. She's meticulous. If there's something in that report that doesn't fit the official narrative, she'll have noted it. Will she talk to us? She will, if I ask. The next morning, Sarah and Dr. Griggs met Dr. Marsh at a coffee shop on the edge of town. She was in her early 60s, with short silver hair and sharp blue eyes. She didn't smile when she sat down. Lionel, she said curtly, this better be important. It is, Dr. Griggs said. We need to talk about Amanda Hale. Dr. Marsh's expression hardened. That case is closed. Is it? Sarah asked. Dr. Marsh looked at her. Who are you? Sarah Monroe, journalist. Great, just what I need, my name in another article. Your name won't be in anything, Sarah said. I just want the truth. Dr. Marsh studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed and pulled a folder from her bag. She set it on the table but didn't open. "We off the record," she said firmly. "Off the record," Sarah agreed. Dr. Marsh opened the folder. Inside were copies of the full autopsy report, photos, diagrams, notes written in precise handwriting. Amanda Hale died from a single stab wound to the chest, Dr. Marsh began. The blade punctured her lung and severed a major artery. Death would have been quick within minutes. "Was there any sign of a struggle?" Dr. Griggs asked. Dr. Marsh hesitated. "That's where it gets complicated." "Complicated how?" She flipped to a page with photos of Amanda's hands. No defensive wounds. Her nails were intact. No skin under them. No bruising on her arms or wrists. "Meaning she didn't fight back," Sarah said. "Or couldn't," Dr. Marsh corrected. "Toxicology showed high levels of diazepam in her system. It's a sedative. She would have been drowsy, slow to react." Sarah's eyes widened. "She was drugged?" "Not necessarily. Amanda had a prescription for anxiety medication. Diazepam was part of it, but the levels in her blood were higher than therapeutic. Either she took too much, or someone gave it to her." Dr. Griggs finished. Dr. Marsh nodded. "It's possible." Sarah leaned forward. "Was this mentioned in court?" "Briefly. The prosecution argued she took extra medication because she was stressed. The defense didn't push back." "Why not?" Dr. Marsh closed the folder. "Because the defense was incompetent, or lazy, or both." Sarah felt a surge of anger. "What about the knife? The one Ethan's fingerprints were on?" "That's another problem," Dr. Marsh said. "The angle of the wound doesn't match what you'd expect from a child." "What do you mean?" "The knife entered at a downward angle, suggesting the attacker was taller than Amanda. She was 5'6". Ethan was 3'9". At the time," Dr. Griggs frowned. "Could he have stood on something?" "Possibly, but there was no evidence of that. No chair moved, no stool, nothing." Sarah's heart pounded. "So the wound suggests an adult." "It suggests someone taller," Dr. Marsh corrected. "I noted it in my report, but no one asked about it during trial." "Why not?" Dr. Marsh looked at her with cold, tired eyes. "Because they didn't want to know. The prosecution had built their case on a foundation of lies, and now, piece by piece, it was crumbling. Dr. Griggs knew he had to see Ethan, not as a spectator, not as a consultant, but as someone who could actually help. It took 3 weeks of paperwork, legal motions, and persistent phone calls before he was granted permission to evaluate Ethan at the juvenile detention center where the boy was being held. Sarah waited in the parking lot. She wasn't allowed. Sighed. "If he talks," she said before Dr. Griggs went in, "ask him about his uncle." Dr. Griggs nodded. "I'll do what I can." The facility was cold and sterile. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, the kind of place designed to strip away humanity. Ethan was brought into a small meeting room by a guard. He was 11 now, 3 years older than the boy in the courtroom photos. Taller, thinner, but his eyes were the same. Distant, guarded, empty. He sat down across from Dr. Griggs without a word. "Hello, Ethan," Dr. Griggs said gently. "My name is Dr. Griggs. I'm here to talk with you. Is that okay?" Ethan didn't respond. He stared at the table. Dr. Griggs had expected this. He had worked with enough traumatized children to know that silence was a language of its own. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," Dr. Griggs continued. "But I'd like to ask you some questions if you feel like answering. You can. If not, that's okay too." Ethan's fingers twitched, just slightly. "Do you remember the night your mom died?" No response. "Do you remember if anyone else was in the house?" Still nothing. Dr. Griggs leaned back. He changed tactics. "Ethan, I want you to know something. I don't think you hurt your mom." For the first time, Ethan's eyes flickered, just for a second, but it was there. Dr. Griggs continued. I think you're scared. I think something happened that night. Something that wasn't your fault. And I think you've been carrying it alone for 3 years. Ethan's breathing quickened. His hands clenched into fists on the table. I know about your Uncle Danny, Dr. Griggs said quietly. Ethan froze. I know he was living with you. I know your mom was afraid of him. Ethan's jaw tightened. His eyes filled with something Dr. Griggs hadn't seen before. Fear. Ethan, was your uncle there that night? A long silence. Then, barely audible, Ethan whispered, Yes. Dr. Griggs felt his chest tighten. It was the first word the boy had spoken in 3 years. What happened? Ethan's voice cracked. He said if I told anyone, he'd come back, he'd hurt. Me too. Where is he now? I don't know. Tears began to roll down Ethan's face. I don't know. He left. And then the police came, and everyone said I did it. And I couldn't. His voice broke completely. He buried his face in his hands and sobbed. Dr. Griggs reached across the table, but the guard stepped forward. No physical contact, the guard said. Dr. Griggs pulled his hand back. He kept his voice calm. Ethan, listen to me. You are not alone anymore. Do you understand? We're going to find your uncle. We're going to tell the truth. And we're going to get you out of here. Ethan looked up, his face wet with tears. No one will believe me. I believe you, Dr. Griggs said firmly, and there are others who believe you too. The session ended 20 minutes later. Dr. Griggs walked out of the facility with a recording of the conversation and a signed statement. From Ethan. Sarah was waiting by the car. Well? She asked. Dr. Griggs looked at her, his face pale. He talked. Daniel Hale was there. He killed Amanda, and he threatened Ethan into silence. Sarah felt a wave of nausea. That boy has been in prison for 3 years for something he didn't do. And the man who actually did it is still out there. Sarah clenched her fists. We need to find him. Agreed. But there's something else. What? Dr. Griggs handed her a document. It was a psychiatric evaluation of Daniel Hale from 7 years ago, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. History of violent outbursts, multiple arrests for assault. Where did you get this? I have contacts, Dr. Griggs said. Daniel was hospitalized twice. Both times he was released early due to overcrowding. The system failed him, and because of that, Amanda died. Sarah stared at the document. If the police had done their job, if they had looked into him, Amanda might still be alive and Ethan wouldn't be in a cell. Sarah took a deep breath. We need to go to the police. Show them this. Dr. Griggs shook his head. They won't listen. They closed this case. Reopening it would mean admitting they were wrong. Admitting they destroyed a child's life. Then what do? Dr. Griggs looked at her with steely determination. We find Daniel ourselves, and we make them listen. But finding a ghost is never easy, especially when that ghost doesn't want to be found. Sarah's article went live. 3 days later, she published it on an independent investigative journalism site. No major outlet would touch it. Too risky, they said. Too controversial. The headline read, Did an 8-year-old boy take the fall for his uncle's crime? Within hours, it had 50,000 views. By the next morning, over 200,000. The comments section exploded. Some believed her, most didn't. But the article did what it was supposed to do. It got attention. And not all of it was welcome. Sarah was in her apartment when the first call came. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. The message was short and cold. Stop digging, Miss Monroe. This is your last warning. She deleted it and kept working. The second call came an hour later. Same unknown number. This time she answered. Who is this? The voice on the other end was distorted, mechanical. You're making a mistake. Walk away. Why? Because I'm getting too close to the truth. Because the truth doesn't matter. The case is closed. The boy is where he belongs. Ethan Hale is innocent. A pause. Innocence is a luxury. Justice is a machine, and you're throwing a wrench into it. The line went dead. Sarah sat there, staring at her phone. Her hands were shaking. She called Dr. Griggs. "Someone just threatened me," she said. "What did they say?" "That I need to stop. That the case is closed." Dr. Griggs was silent for a moment. "Sarah, this is bigger than we thought." "What do you mean?" "I made some calls today. To people I trust in the system. Judges, prosecutors, detectives. No one wants to talk about the Hale case." "Why not?" "Because reopening it would expose negligence, possibly corruption. Careers would be ruined, reputations destroyed." Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "So they're protecting themselves." "Exactly, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep this buried." "What about Judge Brent? She presided over the trial. Can we appeal to her?" Dr. Griggs laughed bitterly. "Caroline Brent? She's the last person who'll help us." "Why?" "Because she's the one with the most to lose." Sarah didn't understand. "What are you talking about?" "Judge Brent was up for re-election the year of Ethan's trial. She was being painted as soft on crime, weak. Then the Hale case landed on her desk. High profile, media frenzy. She saw an opportunity. To prove she was tough." "Exactly." "She fast-tracked the trial, denied multiple defense motions, sentenced an 8-year-old to life without parole. It was brutal, but it worked. She won re-election in a landslide." Sarah felt sick. "So she sacrificed a child for her career." "Welcome to the justice system," Dr. Griggs said quietly. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop scrolling through articles about Judge Brent. The woman was a fixture in Brookridge County. Respected, feared, untouchable. But Sarah found something interesting buried in an old news archive. A complaint filed against Judge Brent 12 years ago. A defense attorney accused her of bias in a murder trial. The complaint was dismissed. The attorney was disbarred 6 months later for unrelated charges. Sarah dug deeper. The attorney's name was Roger Finch. He had been disbarred for falsifying evidence, but when Sarah looked into the case, the details were murky. Witnesses recanted. Documents disappeared. It smelled like a setup. Sarah found an address for Roger Finch. He was still alive, living in a small town 2 hours north of Brookridge. She decided to pay him a visit. The next morning, Sarah drove through winding back roads until she reached a rundown trailer park. Roger Finch's trailer was at the end of a gravel lot. The paint was peeling. The yard was overgrown. She knocked on the door. A man in his 60s answered, thin, graying, hollow-eyed. "Roger Finch?" He looked her up and down. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sarah Monroe. I'm a journalist. I want to talk to you about Judge Caroline Brent." His face darkened. "I got nothing to say." He started to close the door. Sarah put her hand on it. "Please. I think she destroyed an innocent boy's life, just like she destroyed yours." Roger stopped. He stared at her for a long moment, then he stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the trailer was cramped and cluttered, papers everywhere, empty bottles. The air smelled like cigarettes and regret. Roger sat down on a worn couch and lit a cigarette. "You want to know about Caroline Brent?" he said. "She's a monster, but she's a smart monster." "What happened to you?" "I represented a man accused of murder, Edgar Polk. Good man, wrongly accused. I found evidence that would have cleared him. Phone records, alibis, witnesses." "What happened?" Roger took a long drag. "Judge Brent suppressed it. I said it was inadmissible. My client got life. I filed a complaint. 2 weeks later, evidence surfaced that I'd falsified documents in another case. Evidence I'd never seen before. I was disbarred. My life was over. You think she planted it? I know she did, but I couldn't prove it. No one would listen." Sarah leaned forward. "I'm listening now." Roger looked at her with tired, broken eyes. "Then you better be careful, because Caroline Brent doesn't just destroy careers, she destroys lives. And she wasn't about to let Sarah Monroe ruin hers." Sarah returned to Brookridge with Roger, Finch's warning ringing in her ears. But she wasn't backing down. Not now. She met Dr. Griggs at a diner on the edge of town. They sat in a back booth, away from the windows. "I think Judge Brent is actively covering this up," Sarah said. "She has too much to lose. Then we need something she can't. Ignore," Dr. Griggs replied. "Something undeniable." "Like what?" "Like proof that Daniel Hale was in that house the night Amanda died." Sarah thought for a moment. "Mrs. Pitts said she saw a car, dark sedan. What if there's security footage? From 3 years ago? Worth a shot." They spent the afternoon canvassing Maple Drive. Most homes didn't have cameras, but one did. A house 4 doors down from the Hales. Belonged to a man named Harold Chen. Retired engineer. Tech-savvy. Sarah knocked on the door. Harold answered, cautious but polite. "Mr. Chen, my name is Sarah Monroe. I'm investigating the Amanda Hale case." Harold's expression shifted. "That was a terrible thing." "Yes, it was. Mr. Chen, do you have a security camera?" He nodded. "I do. Front and back. Been running for 5 years." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Do you still have footage from 3 years ago?" Harold hesitated. "I archive everything. Why?" "Because I think someone other than Ethan Hale killed Amanda. And your camera might have caught them." Harold studied her for a long moment. Then he opened the door wider. "Come in." His home office was filled with monitors and hard drives. Harold sat down at his computer and began typing. "What date are we looking for?" Sarah told him. He pulled up the archive. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Time-stamped. Harold fast-forwarded through the evening hours. At 10:14 p.m., a dark blue sedan pulled onto Maple Drive. It slowed in front of the Hale house. Then it turned into the driveway. Sarah's breath caught. The car sat there for 2 minutes. Then a figure stepped out. Tall, male, wearing a jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. The figure walked to the front door, used a key, and went inside. "Can you zoom in?" Dr. Griggs asked. Harold adjusted the image. The face was obscured by the cap and shadows, but the build was clear. Adult, not a child. "What time did he leave?" Sarah asked. Harold fast-forwarded. At 10:52 p.m., the figure emerged, moving quickly, no bag, no hesitation. He got in the car and drove off. Sarah felt her chest tighten. "That's him. That's Daniel." Harold rewound and played it again. "This was never given to the police?" "No," Sarah said, "because they never asked." Harold burned the footage onto a USB drive and handed it to her. "If this helps that boy, then use it." Sarah and Dr. Griggs left immediately. They drove straight to the Brookridge County Sheriff's Department. Detective Shaw was still there. Older now, grayer. He looked annoyed when they walked into his office. "Miss Monroe, Dr. Griggs, what can I do for you?" Sarah placed the USB drive on his desk. "You can watch this." Shaw didn't move. "What is it?" "Security footage from the night Amanda Hale died. It shows a man entering the house at 10:14 p.m. and leaving at 10:52. Shaw's jaw tightened. "Where did you get this?" "From a neighbor. A neighbor you never interviewed." Shaw picked up the USB drive but didn't plug it. "Then the case is closed." "The case is wrong," Dr. Griggs said firmly. "Ethan Hale is innocent, and this proves it." Shaw stood. His face was red. "You two need to leave." "Watch the footage," Sarah insisted. "I said leave." "Detective, a child is in prison for a crime he didn't commit." Shaw slammed his hand on the desk. "That child was convicted by a jury. The evidence was clear. This," he held up the USB drive, "is too little, too late." "It's never too late for the truth," Dr. Griggs said. Shaw stared at them. Then he tossed the USB drive into a drawer and locked it. "Get out. Both of you. And if you keep interfering with a closed investigation, I'll have you arrested for obstruction." Sarah felt her blood boil, but Dr. Griggs placed a hand on her arm. Let's go, he said quietly. They walked out in silence. In the parking lot, Sarah turned to Dr. Griggs. He's not going to do anything. I know. So what now? Dr. Griggs looked at her with grim determination. Now we go public. We release the footage ourselves. But someone was already moving to stop them, and this time, they wouldn't just threaten. Sarah uploaded the security footage to her website at midnight. By morning, it had gone viral. News outlets picked it up, social media exploded. The headline was everywhere. New evidence in Hale case. Was justice wrong? Sarah's phone rang nonstop. Interview requests, threats, support, chaos. But one call stood out. Miss Monroe, this is Assistant District Attorney Helen Varga. We need to talk. They met in a coffee shop. Helen was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, exhausted. I worked on the Hale prosecution, Helen said quietly. I was junior counsel. I didn't make the decisions. But I saw things. What things? Helen hesitated. Detective Shaw suppressed evidence, the restraining order against Daniel Hale. Witness statements that didn't fit the narrative. He told us the case was solid. We trusted him. Why are you telling me this now? Because I have a daughter, Helen said, her voice breaking. She's 8, the same age Ethan was, and I can't sleep knowing what we did to him. Sarah leaned forward. Will you testify? Helen nodded. If it means making this right, yes. Within days, more people came forward. A forensic tech who was told to simplify his report. A social worker who tried to advocate for Ethan and was removed from the case. The conspiracy wasn't a shadowy organization. It was a system protecting itself. Prosecutors who wanted convictions, detectives who wanted promotions, a judge who wanted re-election, and a boy who paid the price. Sarah finally tracked down Daniel Hale. He was living under a different name in a halfway house in Idaho. A tip from a former co-worker led her there. She brought Dr. Griggs and a camera crew. They confronted him outside. Daniel was gaunt, paranoid, twitching. He looked nothing like the man in Michael's photo. Daniel Hale? Sarah called out. He turned, his eyes widened. Leave me alone, he muttered, walking faster. You were at Amanda's house the night she died. Daniel stopped. His face went pale. I didn't mean to, he whispered. She was going to call the cops. She was going to have me locked up again. I just wanted to talk, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying I was dangerous, that I'd hurt Ethan. So you killed her. Daniel's hands shook. I didn't plan it. The knife was just there and she fell. And then Ethan came downstairs. He saw everything. I told him if he said anything, I'd come back. Sarah felt rage boiling inside her. He was 8 years old. I know, Daniel sobbed. I know, I've been running ever since. I can't sleep, I can't think. I see her every night. Dr. Griggs stepped forward. You need to confess, officially. Daniel looked at him with broken eyes. Will it help the boy? It's the only thing that will. Daniel nodded slowly. The courtroom was packed. Daniel Hale's confession had triggered an emergency hearing. Sarah, Dr. Griggs, and a team of pro bono attorneys fought to get Ethan a new trial. Judge Caroline Brent presided. Her face was stone. Helen Varga testified first. She detailed how evidence was suppressed, how the investigation was rushed, how a child was railroaded. Dr. Griggs presented his psychiatric evaluation. He explained trauma, dissociation, coercion. The security footage played on a large screen. The courtroom gasped. Then Daniel Hale was brought in, shackled, broken. He confessed, on the record, in front of everyone. I killed Amanda Hale. Ethan had nothing to do with it. I threatened him into silence. That boy has been suffering for my crime. The prosecutor, a new face, didn't fight it. The state acknowledges significant errors in the original investigation. Judge Brent's jaw tightened. She knew what this meant. Her legacy was crumbling. This court will take a recess to review all evidence, she said coldly. 2 hours later, she returned. Ethan Hale's conviction is hereby vacated. However, she paused. Due to the traumatic nature of this case and concerns for his psychological stability, he will be transferred to a juvenile psychiatric facility for evaluation. Not released. The courtroom erupted. "That's not justice," Sarah shouted. Judge Brent slammed her gavel. "Order." 3 months later, Sarah sat in the visiting room of Pinecrest Youth Treatment Center. Ethan walked in, accompanied by a counselor. He was 12 now, still thin, still quiet, but something in his eyes had changed. There was light there, faint, but real. "Hi, Ethan," Sarah said softly. "Hi, Miss Monroe." It was only the third time she'd heard him speak. They sat across from each other. The counselor stayed near the door, giving them space. "How are you doing?" Sarah asked. Ethan shrugged. "Better. The doctors here actually listen. They don't think I'm a monster." Sarah's throat tightened. "You were never a monster." "I know that now," Ethan said quietly. "But for a long time I believed it. Everyone said it so many times, I thought it must be true. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm sorry it took so long." Ethan looked down at his hands. "Dr. Griggs says I might be able to leave here in a year. Maybe go live with a foster family. Start school again." "That's good. But I'll never get those 3 years back," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "I'll never get to be 8 again. Or 9, or 10. I'll always be the kid who everyone thought killed his mom." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. "People know the truth now." "Some people," Ethan corrected, "but not everyone. I saw the comments online. Some people still think I did it. They say my uncle is lying to protect me. They say I manipulated everyone. Those people are wrong. I know, but it still hurts." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan looked up at her. "Miss Monroe, why did you help me?" "Help? You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything." Sarah thought about it, about her own fall from grace, about the Daniels case, about every time she'd been told to stop digging. "Because the truth matters," she said finally. "Even when it's hard, even when it costs us something. The truth is, the only thing that can set us free." Ethan nodded slowly. "Did it set you free?" Sarah smiled sadly. "I'm getting there." Outside, Dr. Griggs was waiting in the parking lot. Sarah joined him. "How is he?" Dr. Griggs asked. "Healing, slowly." Dr. Griggs looked out at the facility. "He'll carry this for the rest of his life. Even after he's released, even after he rebuilds, the scar will always be there." "I know." "And Judge Brent is still on the bench. Detective Shaw is still working cases. The system that failed Ethan is still in place." Sarah clenched her fists. "For now." Dr. Griggs looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not done. I'm filing complaints. I'm writing more articles. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened. Judge Brent, Shaw, all of them. They're going to answer for this." Dr. Griggs smiled faintly. "You really don't give up, do you? Not when it matters." 6 months later, Judge Caroline Brent announced her retirement. The official reason was personal, but everyone knew the truth. The Hale case had destroyed her reputation. Detective Shaw was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. Helen Varga left the DA's office and started working for a nonprofit that fights wrongful convictions. Daniel Hale pleaded guilty to murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. He would never walk free again. And Ethan? Ethan was released from Pinecrest on his 13th birthday. He went to live with a foster family in a quiet town 2 states away. A place where no one knew his name, where he could start over. Sarah visited him once, a year after his release. They sat on the porch of his new home, drinking lemonade. Ethan was taller now. His voice was deeper. He smiled more. "I'm going to high school next year," he told her. "Normal high school with normal kids." "That's wonderful, Ethan. I'm still in therapy, probably will be for a long time. But I'm okay. I really am." Sarah looked at him. This boy who had lost so much. who had been betrayed by everyone who was supposed to protect him. And yet he was. Still here, still fighting, still hoping. "I'm proud of you," Sarah said. Ethan smiled. "Thank you for everything." As Sarah drove away, she thought about justice. Real justice. Not the kind delivered in courtrooms, but the kind that lives in the hearts of people who refuse to give up. Ethan would, never get those years back. He would always carry the weight of what happened. But he was free. And sometimes, that's the closest thing to justice we get. Was that really what happened? Or was that what they said happened? In the end, the truth came out. But the cost was higher than anyone imagined. And the scars would last forever.